Someone insults your intelligence, calls you stupid, naive, or suggests you don't understand something obvious. Your confidence takes a hit, and you're left speechless, wishing you had responded better instead of just standing there feeling diminished. This happens to everyone, but most people handle it poorly. They either stay silent and feel terrible about themselves later, or they get defensive and emotional, which only makes them look less intelligent. Both responses give the insulter exactly what they wanted, proof that their attack worked. But there's a third way, clever responses that defend your intelligence while maintaining your dignity. These aren't petty comebacks designed to hurt feelings. They're intelligent responses that demonstrate the very intelligence being attacked while exposing the weakness behind their insult. The truth is, people who insult others' intelligence are usually revealing their own insecurities rather than accurately assessing your capabilities. They attack because they feel threatened, inadequate, or need to establish dominance through putting others down. Marcus Aurelius faced countless intellectual attacks from political enemies, but responded with wisdom rather than defensive emotions. He wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." The Stoics understood that your response to attacks reveals more about your character than the attack reveals about you. Today, I'm sharing 5 clever responses when someone insults your intelligence. Responses that protect your dignity, demonstrate your wisdom, and shut down intellectual condescension effectively. The third response is particularly powerful because it turns their attack into proof of your superior analytical thinking. Master these, and you'll never feel speechless again when someone questions your intelligence. Now let's begin. Response number 1. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. This response flips the script and forces them to actually demonstrate the intelligence they're claiming to have. When someone insults your intelligence, they're usually trying to position themselves as superior without actually proving it. This response calls their bluff by inviting them to back up their condescension with actual knowledge and insights. I watched this work brilliantly during a marketing meeting when a colleague attacked Sarah's campaign proposal. "You clearly don't understand how our target demographic thinks," he said dismissively, rolling his eyes for the whole room to see. Instead of getting defensive or trying to prove her competence, Sarah responded calmly, "I'd love to hear your perspective on this. What am I missing about how they think?" The room went quiet. Her colleague suddenly had to either provide valuable insights about the demographic or reveal that his attack was just empty condescension. He stumbled through some vague generalizations about millennials wanting authenticity without any specific data or examples. Sarah listened thoughtfully, then asked follow-up questions that exposed how shallow his understanding actually was. By the end of the exchange, it was clear who actually understood marketing and who was just throwing around buzzwords. Sarah looked curious, professional, and genuinely intelligent, while her colleague looked like someone who attacked others to hide his own knowledge gaps. Socrates used this approach constantly in ancient Athens, asking questions that revealed others' lack of knowledge while maintaining his own dignity. The Stoics understood that true intelligence shows itself through curiosity and the willingness to learn, not through condescension and attacks. The psychological power of this response is brilliant. It forces the insulter into one of 2 positions. Either they provide valuable insights that actually help you learn something, or they reveal that their insult was baseless and they don't have the superior knowledge they claimed to possess. Either way, you win while maintaining grace and professionalism. This response also demonstrates genuine intellectual confidence. Only someone secure in their intelligence can respond to attacks with curiosity rather than defensiveness. It shows you're more interested in understanding truth than protecting your ego, which is a hallmark of genuine wisdom. The key to delivering this response effectively is your tone. Say it with genuine curiosity, not sarcasm or passive aggression. Your voice should convey that you actually want to understand their viewpoint and learn from their expertise. This sincerity makes their original insult look petty and unprofessional by comparison. Marcus Aurelius wrote about seeking wisdom from all sources, even difficult people. This response embodies that principle by treating every interaction as a potential learning opportunity while protecting your dignity. When you use this response consistently, people learn that attacking your intelligence won't get an emotional reaction. It will get them put on the spot to demonstrate their own knowledge. Most people who resort to intellectual insults can't handle this pressure because their attacks usually come from insecurity rather than genuine superiority. This response transforms you from a victim of their attack into someone conducting an impromptu intelligence test, and they usually fail it spectacularly. If you've used this response or something similar to turn an intellectual insult into a learning opportunity while exposing the attacker's lack of knowledge, comment 1 below to inspire others who want to handle condescension with confidence and grace. Requesting their perspective shows confidence and intellectual security. But our second response demonstrates your analytical thinking by asking them to explain their reasoning. Response number 2. Help me understand your reasoning behind that. This response forces them to explain their insult while positioning you as someone who thinks analytically and systematically. People who insult intelligence rarely have logical reasons for their attacks. They're usually acting on emotion, insecurity, or the need to feel superior. By asking for their reasoning, you're exposing the weakness of their position while demonstrating that you operate from logic rather than emotion. Mike experienced this during a tense project meeting when his boss dismissed his cost-saving proposal with pure condescension. "That's a really dumb idea, Mike. You obviously don't understand how budgets work in this industry," his boss said in front of the entire team. The room fell silent, waiting to see if Mike would get defensive or just take the humiliation. Instead, Mike responded calmly, "Help me understand your reasoning behind that assessment. What specific aspects of the budget am I not considering?" His tone was professional and genuinely inquisitive, not defensive or challenging. His boss was suddenly in an uncomfortable position. He had to either provide logical criticism that would help Mike improve the proposal, or reveal that his dismissal was just emotional reaction without substance. When pressed for specifics, the boss could only offer vague concerns about industry standards and the way things are done, without any concrete reasoning. Mike then asked follow-up questions. Which industry standards specifically? Can you help me understand how those standards apply to our current situation? Each question made it clearer that the boss hadn't actually analyzed the proposal. He'd just rejected it emotionally and tried to cover with an intellectual insult. Marcus Aurelius valued logical thinking above emotional reactions in all his decision-making as emperor. This response embodies Stoic principles by seeking understanding and reasoning rather than engaging in petty conflict or defensive arguing. The psychological power of this approach is devastating to people who use intellectual insults casually. Most such attacks are emotional reactions disguised as rational assessments. When you ask for their reasoning, you're essentially saying, "Prove that this insult is based on logic rather than emotion." This response immediately elevates you in any professional setting because it shows you're focused on problem-solving and understanding rather than ego protection. You appear competent, mature, and genuinely interested in improving your work or understanding the situation better. The beauty is in how it exposes their thought process. If they can provide logical reasoning, you've learned something valuable and they've demonstrated that their criticism was actually constructive rather than insulting. If they can't provide reasoning, they've revealed that their attack was baseless and you've maintained your professionalism throughout. Seneca taught about the importance of examining our judgments and ensuring they're based on reason rather than emotion. This response demonstrates that you live by those principles while revealing whether they do the same. The delivery is crucial. Maintain a tone of genuine inquiry, not interrogation. You're not trying to embarrass them, you're trying to understand their perspective and reasoning. This sincerity makes your intellectual maturity obvious while highlighting their lack of logical foundation. When people realize that insulting your intelligence will result in them having to defend their reasoning publicly, they quickly learn to either provide constructive feedback or keep their condescension to themselves. If you've ever responded to an insult by asking for logical reasoning and watched the attacker struggle to provide any substance behind their attack, comment 2 below to show others the power of analytical thinking over emotional reactions. Requesting reasoning shows analytical thinking and logical processing, but our third response turns their attack into proof of your superior critical thinking skills. Response number 3. That's an interesting assumption. What led you to that conclusion? This response is particularly powerful because it turns their attack into proof of your intelligence and analytical thinking. Most intellectual insults are based on assumptions rather than evidence, and by highlighting this while asking for their reasoning process, you demonstrate superior critical thinking while exposing their weak logic. David discovered the devastating effectiveness of this response during a dinner party discussion about economic policy. When he mentioned his thoughts on inflation, another guest immediately dismissed him. "You obviously don't know much about economics if you think that." The comment was designed to shut down David's participation and establish the speaker as the economic expert in the room. Instead of defending his credentials or getting flustered, David responded thoughtfully, "That's an interesting assumption about my knowledge level. What led you to that conclusion?" His tone was genuinely curious, as if he was analyzing the other person's thought process rather than defending against their attack. The question hung in the air uncomfortably. The attacker couldn't point to anything specific that David had said to justify his assumption about David's economic knowledge. He'd made a snap judgment based on disagreement rather than evidence, and now he had to either admit that or try to backtrack while everyone watched. When pressed, he could only say, "Well, your point about inflation just seemed simplistic." David followed up, "Which specific aspect seemed simplistic to you? I'd be interested to understand how you analyzed my reasoning." Each question made it clearer that the original insult was based on nothing substantial. Epictetus taught about examining our judgments and assumptions carefully before accepting them as truth. This response embodies that wisdom while revealing that your attacker hasn't done the same intellectual work. You're essentially conducting a real-time analysis of their reasoning process, which immediately positions you as the more thoughtful person. The psychological reversal is brilliant. Instead of defending against their attack, you're now analyzing their thought process, which puts you in the position of intellectual authority. You've moved from being the target of their condescension to being the one examining the quality of their reasoning. This response demonstrates multiple forms of intelligence simultaneously: critical thinking, questioning assumptions; emotional intelligence, staying calm under attack; and social intelligence, redirecting the conversation productively. You're showing exactly the kind of analytical thinking that proves their insult was misguided. Marcus Aurelius regularly examined his own assumptions and encouraged others to do the same. This response shows you operate from that same philosophical framework. You don't just accept judgments without evidence, even when they're about you. The key to delivery is maintaining genuine intellectual curiosity. You're not being sarcastic or aggressive, you're actually interested in understanding how they formed their conclusion about your intelligence. This sincerity makes their assumption look hasty and unthinking by comparison. When people realize that insulting your intelligence will result in a thoughtful analysis of their reasoning process, they become much more careful about making such attacks. They learn that you think critically about everything, including their behavior toward you. This response transforms the interaction from an attack-defense dynamic into an examination of reasoning and evidence. exactly the kind of intellectual territory where thoughtful people have the advantage. If you've ever responded to an insult by questioning the assumptions behind it and watched the attacker realize they had no evidence for their judgment, comment 3 below to encourage others who use critical thinking to handle attacks. Challenging assumptions shows critical thinking and intellectual rigor, but our fourth response demonstrates your ability to analyze social dynamics from a higher perspective. Response number 4. I find it interesting when people lead with personal attacks instead of addressing the actual issue. This response exposes their behavior pattern while demonstrating your ability to analyze social dynamics objectively. Instead of engaging with the insult directly, you're analyzing their communication style from a higher level, which immediately demonstrates intellectual sophistication and emotional intelligence that makes their attack look primitive by comparison. Jennifer experienced the power of this approach during a heated team meeting about project timelines. When she suggested a different approach to client communication, a colleague immediately went personal. "That's stupid. You clearly don't get how this industry works. You're way too naive for these kinds of decisions." Instead of defending her industry knowledge or getting emotional, Jennifer responded with calm observation. I find it interesting when people lead with personal attacks instead of addressing the actual issue. It usually means the topic hit something important that deserves discussion. The room immediately shifted. Everyone could see who was being professional and who was being petty. Her colleague's face reddened as he realized his behavior had been called out in front of the entire team, not through counterattack, but through mature analysis. Jennifer continued, "I'm still interested in discussing the communication approach itself. What specific concerns do you have about the strategy I proposed?" She had redirected the conversation back to productive territory while making it clear she operated on a higher professional level. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about observing human behavior objectively rather than reacting emotionally to others' poor choices. This response demonstrates that same philosophical detachment and wisdom. You're studying their behavior like a social scientist rather than taking it personally. The intellectual superiority of this approach is undeniable. You're showing that you understand psychology and social dynamics well enough to identify and name their behavior pattern in real time. This demonstrates genuine intelligence about human nature and communication effectiveness. This response works particularly well in group settings because it educates everyone present about what they're witnessing. You're essentially providing commentary on the interaction while it's happening, which positions you as the more sophisticated observer of human behavior. The meta-level analysis shows that you think about communication patterns, not just content. While they're stuck in emotional reaction mode, you're operating from a strategic understanding of how conversations work and what different approaches reveal about people's character and competence. Seneca wrote about the importance of maintaining virtue regardless of others' behavior toward you. This response embodies that principle by responding to rudeness with wisdom and insight rather than matching their energy level. The psychological impact on your attacker is significant. They expected you to either defend yourself or attack back, but instead you've made them a case study in poor communication. They're no longer the aggressor, they're the subject of your behavioral analysis. This response also has an almost academic quality that demonstrates intellectual distance from their emotional attack. You're treating their insult as data about their communication style rather than a personal assault, which shows remarkable emotional and intellectual maturity. The key to delivery is maintaining a tone of genuine observation rather than condescension. You're not attacking them back. You're noting an interesting pattern you've observed. This objectivity makes your intelligence and emotional control obvious while highlighting their lack of both. When people realize that attacking your intelligence will result in their behavior being analyzed and discussed like a case study, they quickly learn to engage more professionally. If you want to master more intelligent responses to difficult people and build unshakable confidence in any social situation, like this video and subscribe to Stoic Training for daily wisdom on communication skills and mental strength. Analyzing behavior shows intellectual sophistication and emotional maturity, but our final response demonstrates ultimate confidence through gracious acknowledgement. Response number 5. I appreciate you sharing your perspective. This response demonstrates ultimate confidence by treating their insult as simply another viewpoint worth acknowledging. It shows you're so secure in your intelligence that you can acknowledge their perspective without feeling threatened by it, demonstrating emotional maturity and intellectual confidence simultaneously in a way that completely disarms their attack. Maria discovered the devastating power of this response during a family gathering when her brother attacked her business decisions. You're not smart enough to understand this family business stuff. You should just stay out of financial discussions and let the adults handle it, he said in front of their entire extended family, clearly trying to humiliate her. The room tensed, waiting for Maria to either defend herself angrily or retreat in embarrassment. Instead, she looked at him calmly and said, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Then she simply continued the conversation as if nothing had happened, asking her uncle about his thoughts on the business matter they'd been discussing. Her brother was left speechless. There was nothing for him to push against, no emotional reaction to exploit, no defensive behavior to attack further. Her grace made his aggression look childish and inappropriate, while her continued engagement with others showed she wasn't intimidated or diminished by his attempt to silence her. The rest of the family immediately recognized who had handled the situation with maturity and who had resorted to petty attacks. Her brother's credibility in the conversation was damaged, while Maria's was enhanced by her composed response. Seneca taught about maintaining virtue regardless of others' behavior toward you, understanding that your character is revealed through how you respond to difficulty, not through how others treat you. This response embodies that principle perfectly by responding to rudeness with grace while protecting your dignity. The confidence signal this sends is powerful. Only someone truly secure in their intelligence can respond to insults with such equanimity. It suggests that you're not threatened because you know your own worth and capabilities, regardless of others' opinions. This response completely diffuses the attack because there's nothing for them to escalate against. They expected defensiveness, anger, or retreat, all of which would have validated their attack. Instead, your calm acknowledgement makes their aggression look disproportionate and unnecessary. Marcus Aurelius wrote about responding to hostility with virtue, understanding that this approach protects your inner peace while often shaming attackers into better behavior through contrast. Your grace highlights their lack of it. In professional settings, this response makes you look like the mature, confident leader while exposing them as someone who resorts to personal attacks when they can't make logical arguments. Colleagues and supervisors notice these dynamics and draw conclusions about character and competence accordingly. The psychological effect on your attacker is often transformative. When their insult is met with grace rather than reaction, they're forced to confront the inappropriateness of their behavior. Many people actually apologize later when they realize how badly they handled the situation compared to your response. The key to delivery is genuine appreciation rather than sarcasm. Your tone should convey that you actually value hearing different perspectives, even when they're expressed poorly. This sincerity makes your maturity obvious while highlighting their emotional immaturity. This response teaches people that attacking your intelligence won't get them the emotional reaction they're seeking. Instead, they'll be met with grace that makes them look petty by comparison, which tends to discourage future attacks. When you consistently respond to intellectual attacks with this level of grace and confidence, you develop a reputation as someone who can't be rattled or diminished by others' poor behavior. These 5 responses give you a complete arsenal for defending your intelligence while maintaining your dignity and often exposing the weakness behind others' attacks. The Stoics taught that others' opinions of you don't determine your actual worth or intelligence. Your response to their attacks, however, reveals your character and intellectual maturity to everyone watching. Practice these responses until they become natural. The confidence you'll gain from knowing you can handle intellectual attacks gracefully will show in everything you do. If this helped you build confidence in handling condescension, like and subscribe for more communication wisdom. Comment below. Which response resonates most with you? Have you used any of these before? Remember, true intelligence includes the wisdom to respond with grace and dignity under pressure.